to take a moment, though, and say, as I look out behind each of you, there's a banner on the wall that we see which says where character comes first. I'd like to just extend this, if I could, that I can control the comments and the tenor of this meeting, but what's said outside of here is up to each and every one of us. And so I would hope that as we leave, no matter what issue you're here for and how it falls, that we would treat each other kind of with the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, say about others as you would want them to say about you, and treat everyone with respect, because everyone's opinion matters, regardless if you agree or disagree. We live in a country where everybody has that right to say that, and it should be respected and noted so. So I just hope that everyone, even outside this chamber, would remember that if someone's making comments to this council that you might not disagree with, that you might not agree with, it's still important that we be that city of character that we're so proud of on our banners out on our streets. Our guidelines are as follows. Meetings are public forums in which many opinions are expressed and the business of the city must be conducted. As such, disciplined, honorable, and professional decorum is paramount. Courteous and respectful communication is expected. During public hearing, all questions and statements from the public shall be directed to the chair. If you wish to speak, raise your hand and I will certainly recognize you. Please approach the podium, state your name and address. In order to allow an opportunity for everyone who wishes to address council, speakers should limit their comments to the subject being discussed. Each speaker will be given 5 minutes to address an issue and may only address an issue once unless questions from council are posed to the speaker. And we appreciate you adhering to our guidelines. With that, I would like to recognize our Mayor Pro Tem, Councilwoman Gail Diggs, for additions and deletions to the agenda. Ms. Diggs.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, I do have a motion to amend one item on the agenda. Under new business, item number 11, first reading of an ordinance to sell lot on Thorpe Lane to Buckbox LLC. I'd like to make a motion for that to be continued.
Okay. Any other changes?
That's it.
All right. So is that a motion to approve the agenda with that change? Okay.
I don't think they're discussing it tonight. I don't think it's going to the next one.
I'm sorry, is there? All right, very good. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the agenda as presented with that change? And that's unanimous. Thank you. The minutes were distributed to council for their review before our meeting. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
I so move.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down the agenda to old business. Number 1 is approval of appointments and discussion of appointees to various city boards, commissions, and committees. And I'll recognize our city manager, Mr. Stuart Beatonbaugh. Stuart?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have 4 appointments for council's consideration. Councilwoman Diggs has recommended the appointment of Ricky Brown to the Recreation Commission to replace Donald Moody for a term that would expire September 1st, 2019. Councilwoman Jerido recommends the reappointment of Judy Sennett to the Community Development Committee and, for a term that would expire September 2nd, 2020, and has also recommended the reappointment of Melissa Viola to the Recreation Commission with a term to expire September 1st, 2020. And Councilman DeWar has recommended the reappointment of Ann Dix to the Community Development Committee for a term that would expire September 2nd, 2020. And those are the appointments before you tonight.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
I'd like to point out I'm a councilman and not a councilwoman. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies.
Can I second?
Let the record show. Thank you for that, Councilman Jerido.
You're welcome.
Is there a motion to accept these appointments?
I'll move that we accept.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down old business.
New appointments.
Excuse me. Thank you, Councilman Doran. Are there any names to be considered at our next meeting? All right, very good, thank you. Moving down to old business to number 2, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to amend the city code regarding the enforcement of yard maintenance requirements by title and ordinance amending section 10-4 of the Aiken City Code. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Gregory, is there a second? The mayor will second it. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have, I will just briefly summarize where we are. We had discussion of this first reading of the ordinance August the 14th, August the 13th, and then at the September 10th meeting, we passed the ordinance as presented to council with this discussed in the cover memo and that I read into the record at the September 10th meeting. There was one amendment to the ordinance at first reading, and that is 10-4, Section AA. It was amended to, quote, 18 inches rather than, quote, 12 inches, and there were no other amendments made by council at first reading. We had this as a work session topic prior to the meeting, so that is why I'm going to dispose with going into the changes to the ordinance which are laid out both in the cover memorandum and in the Exhibit A. But that is before, this is before council tonight as passed at first reading with the change from 12 inches to 18 inches.
Okay.
Wait a minute, I thought,
It was passed on first reading.
That was first reading at the September 10th meeting. We discussed at work session a number of various proposals that have come from the Council of Neighborhoods and other individuals since our September 10th meeting.
So we'll have the final reading at the next meeting. Right.
No.
So this one will
No.
be disposed.
Well, that is, I mean, right now, council has made no action other than considering it at second reading at this time.
There could be a motion to accept any of the proposals in front of us at this time.
Somebody needs to make a motion for Proposal B, which we discussed at the work session.
Exactly. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, that's why I was confused. That's why you didn't get a second from me on that, on A.
So you're making a motion to amend?
Yes, with a Proposal B that has been recommended. And there is an adjustment to item 3. And that adjustment, help me here, Mr. Mayor, Andrea.
On Section 3, Proposal B, to be amended to read, would you like to read that, or would you like?
I'd be happy to. To be amended as a wooded piece of property or a real property that has never been cleared or developed will be allowed to stay in its natural state. Excuse me, I'm going to start over, so for the record. A wooded piece of property or a real property that has or has not ever been cleared or developed will be allowed to stay in its natural state, except as follows. And the rest is A and B as proposed on that. The other,
Would we be keeping A and B? I thought that was,
does A and B go away on that proposal?
Correct.
Okay, so A and B is stricken from 3 underneath the amendment.
I think it needs to be looked at further, actually, because there's some parts of it that should stay and some parts of it should go.
My understanding was that A and B would stay, but, I mean, we're talking about real property, we're talking about property that has either always been natural or has been cut and purposely been brought back to natural, which is something, for example, lots in Woodside, they have that one time were cleared, but are now in a natural state, so that they would not fall against it, so.
And just for clarification with ACON, I spoke with Woodside Property Owner Association, and they have real property that has been cleared at one point, but never developed. And they are asking, that it stay in the natural state because it does grow and they don't maintain it. They like it to look natural.
What,
Clarification with everybody.
and what this would do is 10-4AA currently is the section that is titled "Improved Property Shall Not Be Overgrown," and it would replace all language in 10-4AA with what was presented and is a sort of a, it was the template of this was drafted by the Council of Neighborhoods and has been modified. It reduces the height to 12 inches, which is how it was proposed to council initially at first reading. It adds a phrase after 12 inches that "and/or becomes overgrown as determined by the public officer." And public officer is defined at the very beginning of 10-4, which is our property code officials. And then proceeds down as written in Proposal B.
If I may clarify,
Certainly.
it would, if council, if you get a second and you go forward on Proposal B, that's going to replace the language in 10-4, parentheses, AA through EE, for council tonight.
That, Gary, I'm sorry.
The language in Proposal B actually replaces not just the language in AA.
Right.
It also replaces language in BB, CC, DD, and EE.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have a motion with those changes. Is there a second?
Oh, also, we talked about number 2, and yeah, you may have said that.
And/or.
And/or.
Becomes overgrown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Drew mentioned that.
Okay, is there a second to Proposal B as an amendment?
Second.
To replace AA through EE?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? And this is discussion on the amendment. Okay, all those in favor of replacing AA through EE with Proposal B as amended, raise your hand. That's Councilwoman Price, Councilwoman Gregory, the mayor, Councilman Girardeau,
You're saying this is going to replace everything in there?
AA through EE.
Okay.
And then we're going to have discussion,
What?
correct?
This is Proposal B, 12 inches.
12 inches?
But it includes the phrase "and as determined by the..."
Indoor.
It is, but
Yes.
And/or.
we've already had discussion, we're voting on the amendment.
Okay.
So Councilwoman Price, Councilwoman Gregory, the mayor, Councilwoman Diggs, and Councilman Girardeau.
And we're going to have discussion now for the floor, correct?
Back to the original amendment as amended. All those opposed to the amendment? Okay.
Me.
Councilman Dewar, you want to say?
I voted with it.
I'm sorry, I missed you. I apologize, Ed. All right, so Councilman Waltz is an affirmative also. All those opposed was Councilman Dewar. So the amendment passes. So now we're back to the original question as amended. And now we'll have public hearing. And so comments from the audience. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Diggs. Good evening.
My name is Ann Dix. I stay at 314 Gehazi Drive, Aiken, South Carolina. To the mayor, to city council members, to the city manager. I stand before you as the vice president of ACON, and we would just like to express our appreciation to you for inviting us to participate in reviewing this ordinance. And it has, I think, awakened in some of the citizens the need to participate in our city government. As you can see, or as you know, we were deliberate in doing this. We did due diligence. We did research. We visited other places. and we brought those ideas back to you. And we appreciate you listening to those of 15 neighborhoods that we have in Acon. This is the way a democracy works, whether you approve or not approve, but there should always be a discussion so that every side can be heard. And we do appreciate that invitation. And you may see more of us. I would like for the members, Acon, would you please stand, those that are here to support that ordinance? Thank you very much. And as you know, and that is what we're supposed to do when we have issues like this, is to get everyone involved in doing that. So we thank you. We thank you, members of Acon, for being diligent in trying to make Aiken a safe place, a healthy place, and the best town in the South. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ann. Any other comments from the audience? Carl? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Carl McMillan. I live at 812 Grace Avenue, and I'm also the president-elect for the Aiken Board of Realtors. First, I want to thank everyone that put the effort into putting this together. It's certainly in all our best interest in the community to improve the neighborhoods. The only recommendation of the board would be that you consider moving this to the nuisance section. And we believe in doing that, it's going to give it a little broader realm of enforcement, because not only do we have residential neighborhood problems, we've got commercial issues, and it kind of gives you a broader scope. So while we certainly support it, we just think that it may need to be moved to give it a little more teeth and something that can help us in other areas with other type properties in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
And I will say, staff was not ready to give us they wanted to kind of do an analysis a little bit more on what moving it does. They'll have that back for us probably by our next meeting. We can, if it passes tonight as it's presented, anyone who votes in the affirmative can bring it up for reconsideration. And I think at that point we could talk about moving it or start over with it. But I don't think council is certainly ruling that out. I think the idea is certainly something that we want to look at and expand on if it makes more sense over there. So I just want to let you know that is certainly something under consideration as well. Any other comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council?
I just want to thank Ann for her comments, number one, and secondly, thank the committee, the group, the Neighborhood Association for your work. And certainly our purpose is to be here to listen to you. Will we always agree? Chances are I know that we will not. But at least you know that you have a body that will listen to anyone that comes into these chambers and try to reach a judgment that will be fair to the public. Thank you again.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well said, Leslie. Councilwoman Leslie.
I would like to say, I'd like to echo the thanks to Acon. I'd also like to thank some realtors who spoke also we met with, who worked, and we think we have a better ordinance now because of it. So it was everyone coming to the table, and I want to say we appreciate that as well. Okay. It's comments from council at this time.
You had a comment from the audience.
Yeah.
Behind Gary.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't see you before we moved it to comments to council.
I was a little slow on the draw there.
That's all right.
I didn't get my
It's good
hand
to
up
see
in
you.
time. I'm Philip Lockard,
Yes, sir, Mr.
808
Lockard.
Laguerre Road, Aiken, South Carolina. And I urge the council to consider the good for our community this will do. Nobody likes an overgrown yard. We understand there are lots that need to remain primitive, so to speak, but we do know that an ordinance should be one that is understood to better the neighborhood. We even have litter ordinances, and that's to try and the state has them, I think, to keep the neighborhood nice. And we're an all-American city, and I think this is not asking too much to put some teeth into what we're trying to do here in order to keep the neighborhoods looking good and not having them overgrown. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Lockyer.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank ACON and everybody else for your patience. I know we've been waiting on this for a long time, and we finally come to a resolution, so I'd like to thank you for your patience.
All right, very good. Thank you, Stiggs. All right, all those in favor?
Well, point of order here. If we think that it should be in the nuisance part of it, we have to vote in the affirmative in order to get it to staff to be.
I think we can bring it, I'll let council.
I would, if I may, I'm not trying to contradict anything else that anybody else has said this evening.
It should be in the ordinance.
A violation of a code section is a violation of a code section. It matters not whether it's in the nuisance section of the code or the property section of the code. When you violate a code section, you violated a code section, and that code section should be enforced. And so if council wants the staff to consider that, that can be just a directive to the city manager, and then he can get to work on doing that if that's what council wants to do. But for purposes of this vote, you're just voting to amend the ordinance as it is before you tonight, and it's going to stay in the same section that it's in right now. So,
All right, thank you.
from a legal enforcement standpoint, it doesn't matter if it's in this particular section where it is now, or if it's in the nuisance section. It's still enforceable as it's written.
And part of the things that were also amended were the discretionary portion and the and/or, which
Correct.
opens it up.
Yes, ma'am.
As well as all the items that passed at first reading
Right. Correct.
that were amended from what is currently in place in 10-4.
The importance of it to me is just the priority, and thank ACON for all they've done in being able to put all this in order and put up with us trying to understand it, especially those of us who weren't here last year studying it the way that some of you have. Again, I want that to be the priority. I want to see some movement on that of what Councilman Diggs has pointed out, Councilwoman Diggs has pointed out that
That's right, I'm
she's been
not
waiting
mad.
for years for all this to get done. Let's get it done.
All right.
I think we need to set up a meeting with Carl and Mike and
All right. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And why do I feel there's going to be a mass exodus in the next 5 minutes? Thank you. We're going to move down our agenda since we got a late start tonight. Number 3 under old business. This is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to annex 503 Palm Drive and zone it residential single-family RS-15 by title, an ordinance to annex property located at 503 Palm Drive and to zone the same residential single-family RS-15. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, Councilman Girardeau and Councilman DeWar with a second. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pursuant to our water and sewer annexation policy, we received an annexation request from the property owner at 503 Palm Drive. The Planning Commission reviewed this at their August 14th meeting and unanimously recommended be annexed and zoned RS-15. And council passed this unanimously at first reading September 10th, and it is before you for consideration at second reading tonight to annex 503 Palm Drive and zone it RS-15.
Thank you, sir. Comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down old business to number 4, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance authorizing an interfund loan for the installation of HVAC units at Weeks Center and approval of a budget amendment to the 2018-19 budget to include funding for the installation of the HVAC units. By title, this is an ordinance authorizing the borrowing from the Water and Sewer Fund Equipment Replacement Account as outlined in this ordinance for the purpose of funding the installation of HVAC units at the HO Weeks Center and further adjusting the 2018-19 budget for this funding. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Mayor, that we adopt this.
Thank you.
Second.
Councilwoman Price. Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have been working, council approved, I guess, the replacement of the HVAC system, and we are coming back with a budget amendment as we ended up with our energy audit. That we ended up ending the audit after we had our report, so we are going to request a budget amendment for the up to $672,900 to for this HVAC replacement at the Weeks Center, which has been sorely needed. And this is before you for second reading tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Beanball, any comments from the audience? Okay, comments from council?
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
CPST 4 has money for the air conditioning at Odell Weeks as well. Can that money, when we collect it, be used to pay off this loan?
Yes, we have done similar, with CPST before, where we've paid off projects that we've done ahead of time. So yes, that is potential for that.
And then one of the problems we had with the prior contractor was he was out of town and staff wasn't able to adjust the thermostats and so forth. We're going to have total control of this unit?
That will not be a problem now. It will be more like a traditional HVAC unit in that
Good.
regard.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to number 5 under old business, this is a second reading and public hearing of an ordinance to amend the 2018-19 budget to include funding for roof replacement at the Shaw's Creek Water Plant. By title, an ordinance amending the budget of the City of Aiken for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2019. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Girardeau. Is there a second?
Second.
You are. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to the last, we do have a budget amendment for consideration. We needed to replace the roof at the Shaw's Creek Water Plant, and we did get a low bid of $80,815, and with contingency, we would transfer money from building depreciation into the expenditure account for $93,000 to get this work completed. And that is before you at second reading tonight.
Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council? Okay, all those in favor on second reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to new business. Item number 1, this is a first reading of an ordinance to amend the concept plan for the Pin Oak Farms Colleton Park development on Silver Bluff Road to allow for a self-storage facility. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gregory, is there a second? Second. Thank you, Councilwoman Price. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have before you tonight an ordinance to amend the concept plan for this development. This went to the Planning Commission August the 14th. This is located on Silver Bluff Road between the Gem Lake subdivision and Pascalis Drive. And at the Planning Commission meeting on August 14th, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the concept plan amendment as it was currently zoned plan residential. The storage facility is going to be a single building, and what we have for you tonight at your place, and we could put it up on the screen, is we received this Friday afternoon, is a design showing what the similar to what the proposed storage unit would look like. The conditions that were the Planning Commission approved The reason why this was continued from the September 10th meeting was the developer wished to speak to adjacent property owners to minimize the impact on them, and revisions were made to the planning director to that concept plan, and they were such that they could be approved administratively. And we attached the package that the developer submitted to the planning director in a letter dated September 28th. And the changes that were made, I am going to read into the record, since this is the first time they will be, I guess, formally considered. The rearmost north corner of the building has been beveled by a chamfer design with steps in the side build face. The building was moved towards Silver Bluff Road 20 feet. The dumpster enclosure has been added in the rear of the development. The 25-foot buffer requested by the Planning Commission has been consolidated on the development side of the power line right-of-way. A stormwater detention pond has been added to the plan. The site distance at the proposed driveway was measured on site, and these distances meet the requirement for SCDOT access. The building size has been increased from 56,000 square feet to 60,100 square feet, and the sign location was moved closer to Silver Bluff Road next to the entrance driveway. So those are the changes that they made after it was submitted to the planning director. And before you tonight is first reading of an ordinance to amend the concept plan for 11.08 acres within the Pin Oak Farms Colleton Park subdivision, planned residential development on Silver Bluff Road to allow a self-storage facility on a portion of the development with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission and other minor changes to address concerns of neighbors in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Beedenbaugh. Any comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Ruggles, and I live on Huron Drive in Jim Lakes. And I came when the first proposal was made for the storage unit, and stating that that was my backyard that it was going to go up against. And I just wanted to thank the storage unit for working with the plan and making a zigzag so we all have a nice tree buffer. And I just think they've done a really nice job. And the only comment I have now is to not be bright blue. But otherwise, I think they've worked with the community and tried to make it a nice place. I think it'll be useful there. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ruddles.
Thank you.
And if I might say, as many times as we hear people come and speak against things after they're worked out, we have very few who come back to speak on behalf of it like that. Thank you for that. We really appreciate that. Any other comments? Okay. Comments from council?
I too appreciate them, as she pointed out, making the buffer. They've really gone beyond the call of duty to make this work.
All right, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, number 2 under new business, this is the first reading of an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance regarding utility trailers. By title, an ordinance amending the zoning ordinances to regulate utility trailers in residential zones. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I raised this issue in the hopes that we could reduce it from 3 to 2, and I don't think there's support for that, so I'm not going to make any motion.
Okay.
I know how to read tea leaves.
The motion fails on, well, the proposal fails for lack of a motion. Moving down new business to number 3. This is a first reading of an ordinance to annex 127 Branchwater Lane and zone it residential single-family RS-15. By title, an ordinance to annex property located at 127 Branchwater Lane and to zone the same residential single-family RS-15. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Jarrett. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilman DeWar. Comments from staff?
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, we can put all three of these in one, should we desire, or we can take them one at a time for these annexations.
Your motion was for 3.
I concur.
Yeah, I
I'll
understood.
amend mine to do all three.
Okay. Let me read all three into the record, and then the motion will be, the other items considered, then this vote will be the first reading of an ordinance to annex 217 Lakeside Drive and zone it residential single-family RS-15. And the third item will be the first reading of an ordinance to annex 901 Shadow Drive and zone it residential single-family RS-15. So that's okay with the motion and the second?
Yes.
Very good. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have three annexations for council consideration tonight pursuant to our water and sewer policy. The first property is at 127 Branchwaters Lane. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended that it be zoned residential single-family 15. 217 Lakeside Drive was unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission to be annexed and zoned RS-15. And 901 Shadow Drive was unanimously recommended for annexation by the city and be zoned RS-15. And those three annexations are before you tonight for first reading and consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Beanbaugh. If there's any comments about any one of the three, now's the opportunity to speak to council. Thank you. Any comments from council? Okay. This vote is on all three items. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 6 under new business. This is a first reading of an ordinance to rezone property at the corner of Beaufort Street and Abbeville Avenue and approve the concept plan. By title, an ordinance to rezone certain property located at the corner of Beaufort Street and Abbeville Avenue from residential single-family RS-15 to residential single-family attached RSA, and to approve proposed concept plan. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Okay, Councilwoman Diggs, is there a second? Councilman Jericho, comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Beaufort Street Development LLC has requested the rezoning of 9.3 acres of vacant land and the approval of a concept plan. They propose a 143-lot townhome project to be known as Presley Station. And the Planning Commission considered the request for rezoning and concept plan approval at their September 11th meeting. And the Planning Commission set forth the following conditions: that it comply with the concept plan submitted and the provisions in the zoning ordinance section 4.2.9 attached single-family residential projects unless otherwise waived by City Council. Number 2, that SCDOT encroachment permits are obtained and perimeter sidewalks are approved by SCDOT. Number 3, that the development comply with the landscape and tree preservation requirements of the zoning ordinance. Number 4, that the development maintain a 30-foot undisturbed vegetative buffer on the perimeter of the parcel that borders parcels used residentially or zoned for residential uses. Number 5, that the development comply with the signage requirement of the zoning ordinance. Number 6, that a revised concept plan listing any conditions of approval be submitted within 90 days. That's number 6. Number 5 is that the development comply with the signage requirements. Number 7, that upon the concept plan approval, a survey plat indicating the area to be rezoned be recorded at the RMC office within 90 days. Number 8, that the applicant execute an agreement listing the conditions of approval within 90 days. Number 9, that speed bumps be installed on the interior streets of the development. And waivers to the attached single-family design standards may be granted by City Council with approval of the concept plan. So by voting to recommend approval of the concept plan, City Council will allow the following waivers. Number 1, that a waiver to allow driveways to exceed 12 feet on lots of 30 feet or width and less. And number 2, waiver from the required 10 feet perimeter setback applying to street frontages only. So for council consideration is first reading of the ordinance to rezone 9.3 acres at the northwest corner of Beaufort Street and Abbeville Avenue from RS-15 to RSA, and approve the concept plan for 143 townhomes with the conditions and waivers recommended by the Planning Commission.
Mr. Beanball, who is it? I know it's, I'm assuming planning officials, but you just listed a lot of contingencies on this property.
The conditions here, these 9
Yeah,
conditions,
so at what point do we follow along with this? I'm asking because I'm thinking of a situation on Town Creek where there were certificates of occupancies given to whenever there was a storm.
right, with the
Yeah.
stormwater and the
Yeah.
retention area.
So I mean, I just want to make sure, I guess our planning, or whoever
It would be in concert, our planning department working with engineering and utilities,
So
because stormwater.
if they haven't met all these, they would not be given a certificate of occupancy.
That is correct. I mean, that is something, we've amended our land development regulations since that issue on Town Creek to address that issue that we ran across.
Okay. No, very good. Comments from the audience? Good evening.
Good evening. Tilden Hildebrand with Aston Hildebrand here in Aiken. I have copies of the conceptual plan. The one in your packet is not very legible on page 195. I did this at Planning Commission. I'd like to pass this out.
We'd appreciate that.
I have one, but if you don't have enough, just let me know.
I just want to explain a few things real quick. One of the waivers discussed at the Planning Commission meeting too, I think, Stuart, was that garages could face a primary street if the interior streets are considered primary, and let me explain that. These units all face the outside. The units on the perimeter all face these streets, so that's considered the front of these units. The garages face the interior streets. Obviously, these connect to the interior street. So there's a question as to whether the proposed streets to be constructed were the primary streets or not. So if the city council considered these the primary streets, which we hope they don't, we would need a waiver for those garages to face those streets. The issue with the setbacks on the perimeter applied to several lots, like on these little corners here. And there's one on the, that's actually sort of upside down. There's one on one of these exterior corners here, but that was the request for the waiver of the 10-foot setback on the perimeter.
If garages have to face the primary street, would they not then, if they're facing opposite to what you have now, they'd have to cross the buffer?
There would actually be, and I hope I'm understanding your question, there would be no vehicular access to the state highways that surround this site. All the access would be to the interior. The 30-foot buffer that's referred to, and I think this is, got to get my bearings here, Hampton, this is turned sideways. This is the buffer that is recommended in the conditions, and the developer certainly agrees to all the conditions that Stuart listed here just a few minutes ago.
The access to any of the units is from the street. But then the garages are all on the street.
On the interior.
Interior street.
Yes.
Right.
Now, these streets, when it's all done, will belong to the city?
They will belong to the city. We've had 2 formal meetings with the city planner and the city public safety department for turn radiuses, for fire trucks, for width, for aerial trucks. So we've had some fairly extensive review on right-of-way widths, utilities, but they would be city streets.
What made you choose this location?
I may have to let the developer address that. Mr. Smothers is one of the partners, and he's here tonight. We certainly are.
I mean, I appreciate you.
And we are glad that he selected the location. I think it is a good location. It's something that the city needs. I would like, and I'll ask Matthew to come up in a second, but I would like to address real quickly a couple of items or several items that some of the folks from the neighborhood brought up at the last meeting, September 11th, Planning Commission meeting. And some of these things we can control, some of these things we can't, but items were related to increased traffic. According to the Institute of Transportation Engineers, townhomes generate about half the traffic or half the peak hourly trips of a single-family home. So certainly we are concerned about traffic, but due to the level of service of the surrounding streets, the city staff and the Planning Commission saw no problem with traffic. Noise related to parties and parking related to parties. We have 44 parking stalls shown throughout the site, a parking lot here, 10 stalls here, 4 stalls here, which is actually, 43 stalls. So there is some accommodation for on-street or actually out of travelway parking, but certainly we don't have control over people parking in the street. Would there be renters? Obviously, the developer would have no control over whether anyone rented out one of these units. These units are expected to be between 2,000 and 2,500 square feet and in the 250 and above price range.
But somebody could buy one and rent it out.
Somebody
That's what you're saying.
could sublease or sublet to a renter. We just don't have a lot of control over that.
That's not the plan.
One of the neighbors had concern about drainage from Orangeburg Street. He lived over at the corner of Hampton and Orangeburg. There's a storm drain pipe that discharges into this property that will be responsible for picking up that water and carrying it down to the corner as it goes now. So there won't be a backup of storm drain onto his property. And finally, someone asked about would Abbeville Avenue become a thoroughfare? Obviously, I can't answer that. There will be some increase in traffic due to this development. We can't exactly predict which way they'll come and go. And finally, there was some concern about preservation of the neighborhood. This is a development that's on the perimeter of this very nice established neighborhood, which we feel will enhance the values of the neighborhood and not be a detriment to those homes in that neighborhood.
Well, I can tell you, I've talked to many of the residents that's going to be close around the complex, and they're excited.
And I understand the concern. Some of these people that had Miss Booz, I think, actually grew up on the property.
Yes.
Darina Booz.
Right.
And some close by, Mr. McDuffie across the street.
Right. They're good.
It's certainly, I think, would be an enhancement to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Are there sidewalks all the way around?
Yeah, we do have sidewalks proposed all the way around the perimeter, except, no, actually on all 4 sides. Now, these sidewalks are in DOT right-of-way, so we'll have to have approval for that, but we certainly have sidewalks approved, except obviously through the 30-foot buffer here that screens us from the neighbors. Matthew, do you want to come up and give any input on the choice of the location?
Good evening, Matthew.
How you doing? We just picked a location because, you know, we've always crossed a lot of these towns in South Carolina that a lot of people want to be close to the inside the city. So I think this will be a great project for that, and hopefully, you know, other developers will probably jump on board. And
That's what we're hoping.
what's that?
That's what we're hoping. I think Children's Place will be across the street eventually,
Yeah.
and of course, Public Safety not far from that. So this is a great addition to the neighborhood, and we certainly appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. And also the development, you know, it does have walking paths through the middle, through the common areas, and also all the way around with a clubhouse, swimming pool, you know, fitness center, place where they can do parties. And
Can't wait to see it.
Matthew, what is your time frame on this right now? And I know-
soon as we can break ground, you know, hopefully within the next 60 days. It should take, you know, about 120 days to go ahead and put the infrastructure in, give and take, you know, the rain, and, you know, start building the homes. So you'll probably see a good bit of it, because we're going to do it all at, you know, pretty much at one time. And by next summer, you should start seeing something there.
Matthew, I have 3 questions. One is there a covenant
Yes.
for these units? Because they're all attached units.
Yes, ma'am. They will.
There's a covenant. You're saying yes?
Yes.
Property maintenance. Someone will do the maintenance on
Yes, there will be an HOA.
okay. And thirdly, is there a property manager that will be on the
There will
premises?
be.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for? We appreciate your investment in our city.
All right. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you.
It's a bold thing to do, and I think the time is right. And it's going to be interesting to watch this. And this gets back to the study of the neighborhood, Aiken Council neighborhoods, what they were trying to do, and why I say the priority needs to be the nuisance homes in the neighborhood,
Right.
because this area is the area, all of them, where it can go. And it's going to be fun to watch this one.
All right, any other comments from the audience? Yes, sir. Good evening.
My name is John Durgans. I live in Pine Hill Drive in the county. I live not too far from where this project is going to be built, and I disagree with as far as what's going to happen with traffic. It says 850-something cars. Is that over and above with the usual traffic? Because there was no traffic study done, so I don't really know what that means. It says 850, trips on the road. That 850 trips, they figured all together, or on top of what
Can Ryan
usually
answer
goes
that?
on?
Yes. Okay. I'll have our planning director come up when you're,
Well, the other part of it is that most of that area is pretty residential. There's a school not far down the road, and with outside people going to be moving in the town, if they want to go someplace, everybody's in a hurry. So they don't really know where they're going, up and down those side streets. I've lived there for a while, and I don't know where those streets go. And I think there's going to be a big hassle with people parking in the road, because there's definitely not enough room. Every family's got to have at least 2 cars. And the concept doesn't really jive into everybody having 2 cars. I think they're only figuring for 1. And I think it's a really bad idea. I think it could be in a better place, would be a good idea. And I think there's a lot of land in the area that is, available. Why they're picking that? I have 10 acres of land, and I sat up at the top of the 10 acres, looking down the hill at my 10 acres, and tried to visualize this concept of these condos. It would be just, I wouldn't want to live there, let's put it that way. I wouldn't buy one. I think it's going to be really crowded, and I think it's going to be a bigger headache, and it's going to be a plus for the city, one way or the other. Thank you very much for your time.
thank you, Mr. Durgan. And I'm going to have our planning director come up to address that question with the 850.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, usually in addition to what exists already, so those are trips created by the project.
Mr. Johnson, I'm going to let Ryan answer that question. I'll certainly give you an opportunity.
So, yeah, just to clarify, these are 800 new trips that would be generated on a daily basis.
Was there no
by the
traffic study?
It is, all the streets are level of service B or better, and so that means that there is sufficient capacity on those per our traffic management ordinance. Essentially, the traffic management ordinance was written in such a way that you knew what the next level of threshold would be before it would trigger a traffic improvement of any kind. And due to the connectivity of the site and the general number of trips with respect to capacity on those roadways, it's not anticipated that it would generate any improvement that would, so it's not what we're saying, it's not causing a traffic impact, it's not causing a traffic impact to some certainty that it would actually trigger some specific off-site improvements to be done as a result of that traffic.
What are those roads graded currently?
Right now, Beaufort is at level service A, Hampton is level service B. So those are the two higher traveled roads. The others are all, as far, we don't do level of service on there because there's generally not sufficient traffic per capacity. They're not necessarily considered collectors.
All
Right. You may not know this question. We may have to go back then. Is there just one parking place per unit? Two parking seats. Okay, because the gentleman said one, but there's two per unit. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
And it's also a two-car garage, too.
Yeah, most units have a two-car garage plus additional pad parking in front of them sufficient for storage of vehicles.
Put four in there. 4 cars.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Johnson? Good evening, sir.
Mr. Mayor and council members, I'm Richard Johnson Jr., 428 Marion Street Northeast. I think my question might have been answered, but my question is, are these units for rental purposes or homeowner? That's one question. The other question is, will it be operated under homeowners association?
We said that.
And the third one is there a unit anywhere nearby that one could go to take a look at?
Okay.
Those are my questions.
Mr. Johnson, I can just convey, because I've heard some of those answers. The first is, yes, sir, there is a homeowners association. Secondly, I believe Tilden said that while they're intended for probably owner occupancy, certainly someone could rent one if they chose to. I don't think there's any, am I right on this, Mr. Smothers? There's nothing prohibiting someone from sub-renting out their property, right?
So
Yeah.
individually,
Yeah.
they're going to be priced at $250 and above.
Yeah.
So if somebody happened to buy one and they did
Right.
rent it out, I mean,
They're
they're going
gonna-
to ask rent of $3,000 to $4,000 to make anything
Right.
and also cover the expenses. So I don't think they will be rental property.
Sure. And Mr. Smothers, do you have some units like this comparable that?
The closest, now we have done some in Charlotte, but now we have modified them for this area because Charlotte's a little bit more of a modern style. So we're going to make them look a little bit more Charleston style.
Yes.
So, but, by the next reading, everything, I can bring some pictures of what those look like. But we just have to take it, keep in mind that the exterior will be different.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
And let me add that this does meet the request of some of our young professionals, if I can use that term, that have a desire for this kind of townhouses. There'll be mixed uses coming, built, I'm sure, but this does meet some of the desires of people coming into the area.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening. Jane Page Thompson, 240 Knox Avenue. This is a great project, and I'm excited about it. I think this might be a really wonderful opportunity, especially since you've got Austin Hildebrand working with DOT on the sidewalk right-of-ways, to create a crosswalk now that reminds people in this whole little area to slow down for the kids that will be at Children's Place, like Councilwoman Diggs mentioned, that there will be children playing in this neighborhood. We also have horses across the street at Highfields, and so unfortunately, every time horse gets loose at Highfields, it does kind of go out that back gate and kind of run to this wooded area. So it might be a good way to create a traffic calming and possibly a upgraded crosswalk neighborhood awareness scenario. And I just hope the developer will put some parking for dually trucks, because I can see that happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
I think he said something about speed bumps and
Yeah.
other things
Yes.
in the
Any other
streets.
comments from the audience? All right. Any other comments from council?
The speed bumps would be within the streets,
But there is,
not speed
where's
bumps
the
on Hampton
neighborhood
Avenue.
that has the, well, actually out at Citizen Park?
Right.
Those,
They
can put some of those.
That's within the
We can,
development.
we can have our engineers and,
Yeah, but they
A
did.
great concept.
yes, ma'am.
I just want to vote, I'm voting.
Oh, you're voting.
I'm moving.
All those who would like to join Ms. Price in supporting this for first reading, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you.
And by the way, Mr. Tilden said they can do that.
Thank you for investing in Aiken.
Absolutely. All right, moving down to item number 7. This is first reading of an ordinance to rezone property on University Parkway near Grand Oaks subdivision from limited business to general business. By title, an ordinance to rezone certain property located on University Parkway from limited business LB to general business GB. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Woltz.
Second.
Mr. Jarrett with a second. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The applicant, Henry Holly, has requested the rezoning of 2 parcels on University Parkway near the entrance to Grand Oaks subdivision. The parcels are approximately 7.89 acres, and the request is to rezone from limited business LB to general business GB to be better suited for development with the GB zoning. The Planning Commission considered this request and voted unanimously to recommend to council the request to rezone from LB limited business to GB general business with no conditions. With the LB designation, all access would be from Grand Oaks Way, and the buildings would be oriented towards Grand Oaks Way. Now, with the general business designation, those no longer apply. So this is before council tonight for first reading, rezoning of 2 parcels at the entrance to the Grand Oaks subdivision containing 7.89 acres to be rezoned from limited business LB to general business GB.
Thank you, Mr. Biedenbaum. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Yeah, is there someone here that represents this parcel?
Okay.
I have a couple questions to ask.
Good evening, Mr. McNeil.
Mr. Mayor. I'm Mike McNeil with Coward McNeil Real Estate.
Are you?
I'm well.
Good. What do you plan to do here?
Well, we don't have a plan specifically for it yet. We don't have a buyer yet, and that's one of the issues with it. We want the zoning change to assist us in marketing the property on behalf of the seller.
Okay. Do you own there are other properties here. Is this the only portion you own? Or this is the only portion you plan to develop at this time, possibly?
Well, again, I represent the seller,
Okay.
and there are 2 individual properties,
Right.
which you probably have a map of, on either side of Grand Oaks Way. They do have other interests within this area, but these are the only properties we're focusing on at the moment.
Okay, and that fronts the University Parkway. Okay. I'm curious to know whether it's going to be a quick shop, just what is going to go in that parcel.
Well, I'm also the owner of McNeil Appraisal Service. I'm a certified general commercial real estate appraiser that does stuff for developers, investors, and things like that. So if you take a look at what is most likely to go there, a quick shop is not what it's going to be.
Okay.
It's not signalized. There's a lot of reasons it probably wouldn't be suitable for a quick shop, particularly a fueling center. What we want to do is hopefully attract somebody to develop something that's going to benefit all the users in the area, including Grand Oaks.
Okay.
And that could be anything from
Yeah,
a
the
sit-down.
county complex right across from that as well.
Correct, and that could be, and we think with general business and with the activity that's going on there, we might attract a sit-down restaurant or something like that that would benefit everyone.
That is the area that I represent. That's why I'm asking the questions.
Yes, ma'am. You also represent my area.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions for me?
Mike.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, all those in favor on first reading? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to item number 8. This is a resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding with Michael Rubin family for property for road right-of-way. By title, a resolution authorizing the City of Aiken to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Michael D. Rubin Family LP. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Girardeau. Councilwoman Price, second. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have discussed for a number of years the various so-called Whiskey Road transportation alternatives, and we had a work session August the 27th to discuss the various alternatives again, and since that meeting we've had an opportunity present itself where there's a potential one of the alternatives, which is what we're calling at this point kind of a connector road between Nielsen Street and Doherty Road. There is one property owner at this time that owns the property from the area that is described in this portion of the agenda packet, and they have, after some discussion, will propose giving us the property that we need, 60 feet right-of-way footprint, donate to the city, with the provision that after a due diligence period, then the city, there will be a 24-month window that road construction must begin. And I know have discussed this as part of the overall transportation alternative, and I know in fairness to the property owner, since this offer is not open-ended, I believe that it was an appropriate time to take to council for consideration this proposed memorandum of understanding where we could do some due diligence and determine over the course of the next 60 days whether or not we should pursue this project. One of the caveats that we've done in preparation for this is the county, there was a so-called paper road that is parallel to Doherty Road. That was the one piece of property that this limited partnership did not own, and the county has deeded that property to us and through a quitclaim deed, and any of the property that we do not need as part of the road footprint would be then transferred to the limited partnership. But before council tonight is a memorandum of understanding for council's consideration for dedication and for construction of and purchase of property for construction of a road right-of-way.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Beanbaum. Any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments from council? Okay. All those in favor this time? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down to item number 9. This is a first reading of an ordinance to sell property at 636 Hampton Avenue Northwest to Discovery Corp. LLC. By title, an ordinance approving the sale of a lot at 636 Hampton Avenue Northwest to Discovery Corp. LLC. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs.
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Waltz. Comments from staff?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are continuing with our property, listing it for property that is of no value at this time to the city, offering it for sale, and through our Realtor partner, he has presented to us this offer from Dexter Price of Discovery Corp. LLC to purchase the lot at 636 Hampton Avenue for $2,000 in a cash transaction. And again, should council approve this after second reading, any net proceeds would go into our funds for building demolition. And that is before council tonight at first reading.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just for the record, Councilmember Price has left the room. She is related to one of the purchasers for this property, and so she has recused herself from this particular item.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Comments from the audience? Comments from council?
I just thank Dexter Price for buying up property in these areas, and he has some big plans for them, and I just can't wait to see what those are.
Very good. Very good.
That's just as important as great big projects.
Definitely.
The little projects come along too.
Very good. All right. All those in favor? And that's unanimous with one recusal. Moving down to number 10. Under new business, this is a first reading of an ordinance to sell 401 Ridge Avenue Northwest to Catherine Stevens. By title, an ordinance approving the sale of a lot at 401 Ridge Avenue Northwest to Catherine Stevens. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Councilwoman Diggs. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Gregory. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have this proposal before us as well, 401 Ridge Avenue, $2,000. This property is zoned general business. And again, as the prior property noted, any net proceeds would go into the building demolition fund. So this is before council for consideration tonight. First reading of the vacant lot at 401 Ridge Avenue to Catherine Stevens. I will say with this lot, we when Councilman DeWar chaired the subcommittees that we had several years ago, we did a pilot and listed this project for sale to accept sealed bids, and we did not get anyone to submit a bid on this parcel. So this is a property that I guess we eyed to dispose of several years ago, so someone has made an offer.
Very good. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
Not that I have a problem with it, but isn't Mike State our listing agent on this as
Yes,
well?
yes, he is.
And just for the purpose of disclosure, Catherine is his wife, so I just think we need to at least...
That is my understanding.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It just, we need to just know it.
All right, any other comments? All those in favor, first reading? And that's unanimous, thank you. Number 11 was an item continued from our agenda, so we'll move down to petitions and requests. Number 1, this is an approval of bid and expenditure of capital project sales tax 3 for painting York Street water tank. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
second.
Councilman Waltz. Thank you. Councilwoman Diggs. Comments from staff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is time to paint our York Street water tank. It has been 12 years since the last cleaning and painting. We did receive a bid opening. The lowest responsible bid was from McGuire Iron Incorporated from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And the DHEC also requires regular painting of our water tanks. One thing that will happen is we'll have an updated city logo on the exterior of the tank, and we recommend that we award the bid to McGuire Iron for the bid price of $228,900 plus 15% contingency for a total not to exceed $262,900. And both bids are well below the originally estimated budget cost of $450,000. So this is for council's consideration tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Beatonbaum. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council?
That costs a lot of money to paint a water tank.
But it's a lot less than what we estimated.
I know. And it needs it, so.
All right. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Under petitions and requests, item number 2, this is Recommendations from Accommodations Tax Committee for allocations for unspent funds from the fiscal year 2017-18 cycle. And Stuart, do we have someone to make that for us, or
I think
I'll open up for comments for you?
Yes, yes. Again, these unspent funds are, the ATAX committee did meet, Mr. Mayor and council, and recommended distributing to the awarded entities pro rata portion that's shown in the cover memorandum.
Very good. All right, any comments from the audience? Okay. Comments or questions from council? I see Ms. Pendleton is here tonight if there's any questions.
Peggy, did the African American Museum not make a request again? No? Thank you.
I get those hooked under control.
I want to say one thing. You will be opening up. You will be making a change. As you probably know, the accommodations tax funding is based upon an estimate from the
Right.
previous year, so we don't know exactly how much money will be coming in. So the excess was actually about $100,000. And it's a combination of the overage and also of the funds that were not claimed. So if people don't come back to be reimbursed, the money goes back into the pot, so to speak. So there are a couple of events that have already taken place, like Aiken's Macon and the Aiken Soccer Cup. So instead of, we feel like that, there are people out there, new applicants, for instance, and people like the museum, who would like to come forth. So what we're going to do, instead of waiting until January or February, we're going to open it up in November, next month. So anybody who wants to apply for funding can come next month. And we will meet in February.
Okay.
And the money will have to be spent before June 30th. Is that right? My understanding is before June 30th.
Hey, Jessica.
Good evening. The funding that you're voting on tonight has to be spent before June 30th of 2018. It's just rewarding the current applicants that were awarded back in March, which is the July 1st through June 30th funding cycle. The application that Ms. Peggy is speaking of that will open up in November will be for the next fiscal year, your 1920 fiscal year. So that'll be, again, voted on February or March by council. It'll be for the July 1st through June 30th funding cycle of the following year. Yes.
And that's
$69,000 is left over, is going to go into that pot.
So it's not a separate reallocation,
You're
I
asking
guess.
for $32,000. We're recommending the allocation of $32,040 out of the $100,000. So that leaves $69,000. It's going to go back into the pot next year, yes.
What opens up, I'm sorry, I didn't know, what opens up in November for applications?
For our 2019-2020 cycle,
Okay.
we'll get those applications out early. I think this past year, some maybe did not apply because it was a very short application
Okay, good.
deadline. So we want to get that out early, so that gives them a couple months, up to 3 months, to get their information submitted.
And where do we post, I'm just curious, so that individuals who might qualify for ATAX?
We'll make
would-
sure it gets on the
would
city
know?
website when the applications are open.
All right,
So during the months of November, December, and January, they may apply.
very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peggy.
Jessica, let me ask another question regarding some change, and Peggy as well. There's been some changes at the Cultural Center, for example, in administratively, and board members as well. So if they applied for funds now, they would not be eligible for anything at this point in time?
They're not eligible to apply until we open the cycle up in November, and then they would be, they would have to spend that funding come July of
Or
2019,
July.
between July 2019 and June 2020.
Okay.
So you have your cycle, we award the funding,
Yeah.
and then they have a year to spend it.
Okay.
And there was a change, Jessica, wasn't there? The money used to be required to be spent on advertising, but now there's another category?
Is it?
It's still marketing, and it's outside of the
marketing.
50-mile radius of Aiken,
Okay.
correct. And you also have to make sure, I mean, the goal is to have heads and beds.
Right.
So-
Tourism.
I think there was a proposed change to some legislation that would allow some other uses, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's marketing for a specific event or potential event. Yeah.
Thank you, too, for your longevity in working with this.
This will be my 6th tourism supervisor.
She didn't appreciate it. She didn't appreciate it.
Thank you, Peggy, for your service. Any other questions from council?
I have one comment I'd like to
Yes,
make.
sir.
You know, we've talked about some development projects during this meeting, and the mayor and I were delighted to be at Rose Hill, which has been repurchased and under new management, and is going to be a major advancement for the business community in the city of Aiken. What's already been done out there, and he's probably only halfway through, is amazing. A lot of work, and I think by the time the end of November comes around, we'll have another very vibrant business. And I want to just publicly thank Katie Patel for the massive investment in Rose Hill.
Well said. All right, any other comments on item number 2? And then all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Moving down petitions and requests to items number 3. This is a request for banners in the downtown to promote Adams in the Alley event. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I second.
All right. I'll slow that one down for you. Councilwoman Leslie Price and then Councilwoman Diggs with the second on it. Comments from staff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the ADDA is requesting permission to hang banners on the alley arches to promote the event, which will be Saturday, October 20th. Duration would be October 9th through October 20th.
That'd be great. Thank you. Any comments from the audience? Comments from council? All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Petitions and requests, that's it, isn't it? How about that?
Yeah.
We've worked our way through the agenda.
I do have one quick reminder, next Monday, and it's at 4:30 PM, and issues and updates it's 5, but I think after talking with some council, 4:30 PM, we're going to have we used to have this every year, but have not since 2013, our joint City Council Planning Commission Action Agenda meeting in the council chambers. So again, I want to remind everyone, 4:30 next Monday, a joint Planning Commission City Council Action Agenda meeting.
And this is good, and thank you for reactivating that. The second thing that the mayor and I have talked about has been the legislative meeting. We used to meet with our legislative delegation before they returned to their session. And I don't know whether we have anything on our hearts and minds to meet with them or not.
And I know that's trying to get, I've not reached out yet, but I do have a note to contact them to try to get something scheduled after November 6th, the election day, sometime between then and early January, to have a joint meeting with our legislative delegation.
Very
I'd
good.
certainly like to see us develop a proposal for assistance in making it a little bit easier for annexation of properties. We have 6,000 donut holes in the city of Aiken, so we should ask them for some help to give us flexibility.
We've been asking.
What time?
What time?
4:30 on Monday, the 15th.
All right, very good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so
Is there a second? Mr. Waltz? All those in favor, please stand up.